Welcome back in to another episode of the Armchair Illini podcast. My name's Alex G. I'm the owner of Armchair Illini. We're back for another game day preview here on Armchair Illini. It's crazy. We only have two of these bad boys left versus Oregon and Maryland. Illinois is in a very precarious spot. Vibes are at an all-time high after they won 12 in a row. However, now Illinois has lost four of their last six, including a complete domination on Friday versus the Michigan Wolverines. We're here to talk about it all. We'll briefly talk today about the Michigan game. For some reason, I decided to rewatch that game. Not sure why. 84-70 seems close, but it really, honestly, was never that close past the first 10 minutes of the game. So before I bring on my good friend Robby Nardini, who's been doing all these game day previews with me, I do want to shout out our first sponsor, Hamilton Walker's Seafood, Steak, and Spirits, the best dining experience in all of Champaign-Urbana, whether it's the prime steaks, fresh seafood, or the vibe in general. Hamilton Walker's is the place to go after a big Illini win. We got one more of the regular season gift card giveaways. That's $50. Heading up sometime this week, maybe. I don't want to do it too close to the Michigan giveaway, so be on the lookout for that. We got one more for the regular season and a nice surprise for you guys as we head into postseason play. So shout out to Hamilton Walkers. All you have to do to enter that giveaway is check out our social media page and be subscribed to our YouTube channel. If you're not going to join Illini fans, I do appreciate a subscription to our YouTube channel as we are working very hard to provide the best game day content out there. So without further ado, I will bring on my friend, Robby Nardini. Robby, you were at the Michigan game. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it was a great environment. I really enjoyed the amount of orange that was in the stadium. Felt like one of the most highly anticipated games in a long time for Illinois. I was at the Tennessee game last year, and this one felt even bigger. And it felt like the crowd wanted to, be alive, be rowdy, kind of help will this Illinois team to a victory. And unfortunately, the first half we were down six. I think the crowd was still in it. Unfortunately, towards the second half, it was a blowout towards the end, and that 84-70 score looked a little bit better than it was. So unfortunately, not the best experience at State Farm Center, but kudos to the crowd and kudos to all the alumni that came out to the game too. Brandon Paul, Myers Leonard, DeMonte Williams, and some others too. So the stars were out. Unfortunately, the Illinois Fighting Illini were not able to win.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about this off air. If you win the UCLA game, the vibes are a little bit different. I don't think anyone expected Illinois to wipe the floor with the Michigan Wolverines. Obviously, we're expecting a big battle. So I think the UCLA loss definitely highlights the loss versus Michigan. But then at the same time, the way that you lost, I think a lot of fans were expecting you to at least go toe to toe with it being at home, and Illinois and Michigan kind of being that top tier of the Big Ten. But Michigan thoroughly dominated you. You're outclassed in pretty much every department. And the biggest disappointment for me, at least watching the game back, was just how timid the Illini looked, and I haven't seen that in quite some time. I think they looked a little bit unsure. I thought Davin Mirkovic played really well, and I'm sure you can attest to that and how hard he played. Going up against Merez Johnson in that front court is no easy task, but I think the rest of the front court and some of the guys, even on the perimeter, whether that's Keaton Walker, looked timid, and they were second guessing a lot of what they did, and that led to a lot of defensive miscues, poor execution on the offensive side, and against a team like Michigan, who is the favorite for the national championship alongside Duke, your margin of error is super, super thin. It's razor thin, if you will. So, with that being said, it was just a very disappointing presentation for Illinois. And I think they really let a big opportunity to reel in this crowd and build up postseason hype with the way that they played versus Michigan. So, disappointing loss for sure.
Yeah, I think they just overwhelmed us with their athleticism, and they have guys that like Merez and like Yaxel, they're big and long and upperclassmen that really impose their will on us. We do that to teams occasionally, and we find the matchups that are good for us. And credit to Michigan, Merez is a really good perimeter defender now. We were not able to just drive by him pretty easily like you can other bigs, and Yaxel was on Keaton from the moment Illinois got the ball. And if you watch the game over or at the game, as soon as Michigan scored, Yaxel was in Keaton's ear, like it was white on rice. He didn't let Keaton catch the ball easy. He didn't let him drive easily. and Mara really just dominated inside the paint as well. I think there was a couple plays where Andre and Merck and other guys were trying to score at the rim, and Mara was not going to let that happen. So you see it with Illinois imposing their will, rebounding occasionally, and just with our height and ability to be bigger than other teams. And you can't really do that against teams like Michigan and Duke and other Final Four caliber teams. They're just as big, similar to Florida. And it was disappointing. I wasn't going into the game thinking we were going to, for sure win the game. But you look at other teams in college basketball like Kansas, and I know Iowa State just lost, but some good home court environments there, or at least in the game, usually protect home court. And we've lost too many home games this year already. Like I said in the preseason, I wanted to be better at our home court, and you really just got punked by a Michigan team who is better than you. But like you said, you lose to UCLA, you lose to Wisconsin. That becomes the story. You lose 4 of 6 going into March. That's not where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think we talked on our preview some of the keys, and specifically the Ivisic twins. Tomislav Ivisic, 3 of 10 from the field, 7 points, 4 rebounds. Zvonimir Ivisic, 2 points, 1 of 3 from the field, 0 threes made, 1 of 8 from the 3 from both of them, combined 4 rebounds. That's just not going to get it done. And you need more from those guys, especially going up against the front court like Adai Mara, Jax Lundenberg, Merez Johnson. We could talk about some of the situations. I do think that Illinois' guards did not play well defensively, which caused Tommy, and Merck to be in some bad defensive situations. But they got to hit shots. They can't go 1 for 8 from the three, and it just was very disappointing in that regard. Like you were saying, in terms of the big games, because Brad Underwood versus top 10 opponents at home, he's 4-10. That's a tough record. Obviously, it's no shame to lose to top 10 opponents, and those teams are going to do what they do. But 4-10, that's not great. And you want to be at least 500 if you want to say that your home court is truly a advantage. So tough record for Brad Underwood and his crew. Another stat too: Andre Stoyakovich, 12 minutes, 0 points, 0 for 2 from the field. He sat for a really long time after coming in, and he had 2 really bad possessions when Illinois was up, I think, 12-10. He tried to drive it to the rim and took like a really weird post fadeaway, and then tried to yak one onto 7'3" Adai Mara, giving up the ball. Just not good enough. Just
Yeah,
not good enough.
yeah, we're gonna need him to play better, and I don't blame Brad for sitting him for that long. He came into the game and did not play well. We've talked about it before, but he kind of just puts his head down and tries to get to the rim, which works sometimes. But when you play a team as big as Michigan, it's not really going to work. But at the end of the day, they need to figure out how to get him going. This team isn't going to go to the Final Four if Andre Stojakovic isn't playing well. And I think Andre also needs to rebound the ball better, make better decisions. But, it's also on the coaching staff to figure out what works, especially since Kylan has been back. I'm not sure, the whole dynamic offensively hasn't looked as good recently, just with Kylan, Keenan, Andre. Kylan hasn't really been shooting the ball well with his, maybe it's the wrist, maybe it's just he's not that great of a 3-point shooter. So they need to figure out how to have 2 non-shooters from the 3-point line on the court at the same time. And Andre, needs to have the effort defensively and just rebounding as well.
Yeah, so tough for the Illini to really overcome that one. But now they head to Oregon. This is the last home game of the season. It's senior night. Shout out to Ben Humrichous, AJ Red, Kylan Boswell, who will all be going through the senior day festivities. But the Oregon Ducks, they were picked 5th in the preseason Big Ten poll. They have not had the season that they have expected. They're one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. Obviously, they've dealt with injuries to their very talented guys, and Nate Biddle, Jackson Shelstead, who is supposed to be one of the top duos in the country, but that has not panned out for the Oregon Ducks. But Nate Biddle is back, and he's playing pretty well. They had a very nice win over Wisconsin, who beat Illinois, who beat Michigan. And then they obviously lost a tough one at the end of regulation versus Nick Martinelli and the Northwestern Wildcats. What are some of your thoughts about the Oregon Ducks?
Yeah, well, it's a nice get-right game, playing Oregon and then Maryland after, losing 4 out of your last 6. You need to work on some things. I know it's a quick turnaround from – I guess not really a quick turnaround from Friday, but they're not a great team. They have been a disappointment this season. They were supposed to be a NCAA tournament team. And I know their injuries to Jackson really derailed that a little bit. but at the end of the day, we're at home, senior night, and it's crazy to say that it's already senior night, but got to take care of business. It's one of those games you can really work on things and still win, hopefully by 15 plus. I know they've been playing well as of late, and Biddle's a really good big guy, which should test Tommy and Z too. But it's an opportunity for us to work on some things, get back in the win column, get those vibes back up to where they were at when Jake Davis said they were high.
Yeah, definitely. And I think on top of that, Illinois got complacent in terms of what Brad Underwood said. I think they were definitely feeling themselves a little bit too much after that USC game when shots were going in and the vibes were, like you said, at an all-time high. They started off really well with UCLA and they just kind of kicked their feet up. And ever since then, they've really, really struggled. Whether that was the rest of the first half in that UCLA game all the way up until this Michigan game as well. I do think Oregon can give Illinois some problems with their size. We've talked about this the entire season in terms of having a stretch big. Nate Biddle isn't a stretch big by any means. He's shooting about 33%, but he's got the skill set that can really give you some trouble, especially when you look at teams like Wisconsin, who's given Illinois some trouble in the past. Michigan State's bigs, whether it's Jackson Kohler, Carson Cooper, both of them gave Illinois a lot of trouble. So I do think that Illinois needs to play well. Whether or not Oregon is a good team, it's difficult to decide, especially with their injuries, but they have talent like we said with UCLA, the results may not be there, but the talent is certainly there. Kwame Evans, former McDonald's All American. Sean Stewart, 6'9". He's a forward that can also give Illinois some trouble. So I do think that this game is really going to highlight Z and really going to highlight Tommy, both of who are shooting very, very poorly, particularly Z ever since in the past maybe month and a half or so, ever since that Minnesota game where he had 18 and 8, it seems like he's really, really struggled. So what are you hoping to see versus the Oregon Ducks outside of obviously a win? But what are you really going to keep your eye on as Illinois takes the court here?
Yeah, Z might need to put that mask back on, and maybe he can shoot a little bit better. And we talked about in the Michigan game, our big guys needed to make threes, and they did not. And I am looking for them to improve there in this game. If you're not going to make threes and get down to the block, and Tommy has been really good on the block. I know Biddle is big, and he's a senior too, so very smart player. But if you're not going to make threes at a high rate, get on the block. Tommy's one of the best 2-point percentage big guys in the whole league. So, let's do what is efficient for the Illinois offense. But really, just mainly, I know they're a decent team. They've won 3 out of 5. But, Penn State, USC, I forget their other win. But
Wisconsin.
yeah, Wisconsin's a great win. So the other ones are kind of iffy. And I really just think we're the better team. We can get back to the basics. Don't overthink it. I think, hopefully over the next couple days of practice or the ones we already had, Underwood probably ripped into them a little bit and, got them back on track and doing the little things that are needed to win games in the Big Ten. So really just looking for us to start off strong and sustain a lead and hopefully don't take your foot off the gas against a lesser opponent. And you can really bring that momentum into the Maryland game. Maryland's never a free win with Brad Underwood and Illinois, but they're also not very good. And, just win the last 2 games going into a March stretch that has some pressure now for this Illinois team. I think that will be huge going to the Big Ten tournament. And I think you stop Nate Biddle, and I think you win the game. Easier said than done, but definitely a test for Tommy and Z to get back on track.
Yeah, definitely. This Oregon team isn't very deep, but they got some good guards too as well. I know Jackson Shelstead has been missing some time with some injuries, things like that. He probably won't play versus Illinois as well. But they got Takai Simpkins, who's a transfer from Elon. He's a bigger guy, or not a bigger guy, but an older guard, if you will. They got my boy Wei Lin, who's been balling. And playing pretty well off the bench there. Hopefully has a nice game in an Oregon Ducks loss. Shout out to that guy for reasons that are obvious. I do want to ask you too about some of Brad Underwood's comments about the defense. Michigan dominated Illinois on in terms of exposing the Illini's defense. We talked about it all the time that this team is not going to lock anyone down, but if they want to reach their ceiling, they have to be at least good enough as to where they can let the offense do its thing, and can they at least limit teams enough so that the offense doesn't have to do too much, or it can compensate for maybe a subpar shooting night, if you will. Brad Underwood said that we need to get more simple on that side, and we need to get back to, obviously, he talks about the daily vitamins a lot, but he talked about simplifying things, which I thought was strange heading into March and it seems like you're still trying to figure out what you want to be doing, which is just very strange for me heading into March. But what do you think he meant by that, and what do you expect to see versus Oregon and versus Maryland defensively?
Yeah, it's not a great sign going into March that you're still figuring out your defense, but better late than never. You still, like I said, have a couple games to work on things and a lot of practices before it's a single elimination tournament and you go home if you lose. I think in the beginning of the season, we did a really good job at using our length, using our size, and making it hard for teams to score in the paint, and at least forcing them to shoot over us. If they're going to make tough shots, then so be it. I think we've had some guards that are getting into the lane at will. We're not protecting the paint as much. And if you're going to play, not force turnovers, play super soft, and we're ranked last in the whole country in forcing turnovers. You really have to have one thing that you're good at, and protecting the paint, using our length was one of those things. So I think what he meant by that is really just playing drop coverage a little bit more. I think Tommy and Z have been in some tough situations. We've done a little bit more switching than I like, and I think just getting back to those basics, drop coverage, tough twos that Brad Underwood likes to play is probably what he means there. And I don't mind going zone, doing a little bit trapping here and there to switch things up, but I think having a number one defensive principle, sticking to that, working on that for the next few days, few weeks, and then really just getting good at those things, that would go a long way. And similar to 2024, when we made the Elite Eight, the defense was not good at all, and their offense overwhelmed teams in the NCAA tournament. So, that could still play a part in the Big Ten tournament as well as in the NCAA tournament. You really just have to be good enough defensively and rely on our offense to win games and hopefully make a run.
Yeah, I think it's what expected because I think the last 4 out of 6 games you've had the worst defensive performances in the season. And if you look at the analytics, whether it's Ken Palm or Evan Mia, their defensive rating, I know it's 30 right now on Ken Palm, but it's in somewhere in the 80s in the last 6 games. So you've taken a really big hit. Obviously, I know you weren't healthy, but Kylan Boswell's been back. So I think this team has struggled defensively, and you can't blame it on health, whether that's scheme, whether that's whatever. This defense has really struggled. So this team also hasn't showed enough film to say, hey, they're really good at this on the defensive side. So I think it puts Cam Crocker, who leads this defense, and Brad Underwood in a kind of weird position because you struggle both on the perimeter and inside. You're allowing so many points in the paint. I forgot the stat of how many points they gave up in the paint versus Michigan. I think it was like 40 or 50. So you're struggling a lot. So I think simplifying it is the obvious answer, which likely means they're going to be playing a lot of drop coverage and they're going to force teams to take long twos. So just you don't have to switch and you don't get such easy layups or points at the rim. So drop coverage, I expect a lot more of that. Whether that's good or bad, I think it kind of balances you out. It probably lowers your ceiling, but then raises your floor in terms of what you can do defensively. So expect more drop coverage. Shout out to Chester Frazier on the drop coverage as well, and his liking for that. How about offensively? What do you think about this team? And I know they obviously have the best offense on Ken Palm, but when they're not able to hunt that matchup, the offense struggled a lot. And obviously they got some good looks, I thought, versus Michigan, but it wasn't good enough. What do you think about the offense?
Yeah, I think the offense was okay. I think we scored 70 points, which was the least we've scored since the UConn game. So it's been a while since we haven't scored or at least Indiana, we scored 71, and then UConn was maybe 71 as well. But I think just maybe coming a little bit too reliant on Keaton. He was really good playing in pick and rolls really, really well. But you get into Big Ten play, all these coaches are really good. All these coaches are really good at scouting different teams, and they're going to come at you, be physical with Keaton, etc. Just having that second or third option, I feel like in the beginning of the season we were talking about how this Illinois team can win in multiple ways. You have Andre Stoyakovich, David Mirkovich is one. If one guy is not shooting the ball well, then you have some other guys to lean on. And it kind of goes back to that Andre Stoyakovich. We need to get him in actions, need to get him going offensively because it can't be all Keaton Wagler. I know he's amazing off ball screens and has 46-point performances, but you need other guys to step up and keep that shot selection good too. I think there was a couple plays in the Michigan first half where we were settling for threes, I mean, Z hasn't made a three in years, and it's one pass shot for Z. And like I said, if Tommy's not going to make threes either, you got to find another way to affect the offensive, game plan and get and post up or whatever. But I think overall the offense is fine. Just continue to stick with what you do. Take those gold level shots. And at the end of the day, if you're playing a Michigan type team, going back to the defense, they are going to overwhelm you athletically. So it's easier said than done to keep them out of the paint. And it was a similar story on the offensive end too. You could tell they were just a step ahead, a little bit quicker than us. So those type of teams like Duke and UConn and Michigan, you're not going to see them to the Final Four or Elite Eight, I should say. Thankfully, so hopefully your offense can take you far enough, and then maybe you could get a great performance again in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, definitely. Illini fans, I do want to shout out our second sponsor. It is Campus Inc.'s official NIL store. Get officially licensed merch from your favorite Illini athletes or some of their nice patch collection, including this crew neck right here, which is just brand new, fresh off from the NIL store. Shout out to those guys. Use code Armchair Illini, Armchair Illini in all caps, to get 15% off of your order from your favorite Illini athletes. Be on the lookout for them as March starts to heat up. And shout out to Campus Inc. If you're new here, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Helps us out quite a bit. We're going to keep doing game previews for the rest of this Illini basketball season. Robbie, Andrei Stoyakovich, we've talked about him quite a bit about his performances in the last couple games, particularly just on the show in general. Would you put him back in the starting lineup? It seems that he's been coming off the bench since that USC game. He had a really good game, scored 20 points in, I believe, 17 minutes, something like that. Had a really efficient night. But ever since then, it looks like he's really struggled. Small sample size, as it's only been 3 games. But would you bring Andrei Stoyakovich back into the starting lineup, or would you kind of leave things as is and keep Jake Davis out there as the floor spacer?
Yeah, it's a tough question because against Michigan, I was thinking you should start Andre or Ben just to guard their big guys. Obviously, they didn't. I think at this point, it doesn't really matter to me if he starts or not. He just needs to gain the confidence. If he needs to start to play well, then of course I would say put him in the starting lineup. But I really just think it's more so get him in early. Run actions for him right away, get him in space. Just help him get going a little bit, whether that's getting to the free throw line, et cetera. I know he can't shoot the ball very well, so it's not the easiest thing in the world to, run our offense through Keaton and get him going early. But for me, I think you just leave it as is. I do see an argument for getting him back in the starting lineup for confidence reasons, but I feel like you can do the same thing. Get him in at the 16-minute mark, let him play a little bit, especially in these next 2 games. It's really with Oregon and Maryland, you should win the game either way. So even if he makes some mistakes, I think that's just fine. Really just got to get him in early and gain his confidence again. So maybe even in practice, talk him up a little bit, whatever you need to do. But hopefully we can see a good Andrei Stoyakovich over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, this team is not going anywhere if Andrei Stojakovic is not playing to his full potential. In the biggest game of the year, you can't have him play 12 minutes and score 0 points. I think it was 0 points, right? So he was your biggest offseason investment. So obviously he needs to take the onus and play better. But I would end up putting him back in the starting lineup just so he can get a rhythm. I think that Andre is the type of player that builds a rhythm. You saw that versus Texas Tech, you saw that versus Alabama, and you saw that versus USC, and you saw that versus Maryland in the first game that Kylan Boswell was out. I think rhythm has been a huge thing for him. I see the argument for Jake Davis being the starter because he provides a lot of floor spacing and he fits really well alongside a Keaton Wagler, Kylan Boswell, and Merck and Tommy. But at the same time, to counter and go off your point and have Jake Davis in the starting lineup, I'm not sure if we can have both Kylan Boswell and Andrei Stojakovic in the lineup at the same time because both of those guys just cannot shoot. So Kylan Boswell has really, really struggled. I think he was one of 6 versus Michigan at the 3-point line. He's really struggled in general, even before the hand injury. So I think teams are starting to really figure that out and shrink the floor, especially inside the paint, which has prevented Merck, prevented Tommy from getting mismatches, has clogged up the lane for Keaton, and teams are starting to pick Keaton up full court like how Yaxel Lenderberg did. And I think that is the recipe to beating this Illinois team, and it does give me some pause heading into March. So Personally, long story short, I would probably insert Andrei Stoyakovich back into the starting lineup because what do you have to lose at this point? And you need your best or your highest paid offseason addition to play well. So, interesting little discussion there in terms of Andrei Stoyakovich being in the starting lineup or not.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting debate. I know we played really well with Jake Davis in the starting lineup at one point. Offense was really good, but we do need Andre defensively too. That's the only issue with Andre and Kylan not being on the floor together. You are sacrificing a little bit defensively. But I think Kylan played pretty well, other than the 3-point shot against Michigan. I think he drove the ball well, and we need more of that just to help Keaton out a little bit too. So I'm fine with staggering the minutes a little bit between those two as well as Keaton. If Keaton's out of the game, it could be an opportunity for Andre to catch a rhythm, get used to get some offensive sets ran for him, and kind of get some shots up too. I think he's kind of a microwave type scorer. You saw it in a lot of these games. If he has a good game, he scores 20 plus or 18, whatever it is. So it definitely is important for him to get going early in these games.
Any final thoughts before we head to our game day prediction for Illinois versus the Oregon Ducks?
Would you rather have Dame Sar or Andrei Stoyakovich right now?
That's a tough question. I'm actually looking at the Duke versus NC State game right now. Dame Sar is playing his role pretty well. I think
Yeah.
obviously it's a star-studded team. Cam Boozer is really good. Isaiah Evans is really good. Caleb Foster is really good. Sar is just the really long wing that plays really good team defense and knocks down corner threes, and he's playing that really well. His stats are, I believe, he's averaging like 5.6 points a game, but he's still on NBA boards because he's playing that role so well. I think he's 6'9", he's crazy long, and he's playing really good team defense. But I heard he costs between $2 and $3 million, from what I heard. So I'm not sure I would pay that much for a guy to who would probably struggle with more of a usage role. So Andrei Stojakovic, we believe in you. We've seen how good he's been. So I think we need that, and hopefully we could see the best of Andrei Stojakovic, because if he has a couple good games, I do think that he can win you some games in March. That's how good I think Andrei Stojakovic can be. Um, Before we head to the game day prediction too, I do want to talk about seeding. You do a lot of work in terms of bracketology, Big Ten tournament seeding. You're always the first to kind of know it. Where are the Illini right now in terms of the Big Ten tournament seeding, and what do they need to do to make sure they have that legendary triple bye?
Yeah. 4 seed right now. I tweeted out earlier today, over a 70% chance to get the 4 seed, which sucks because you have to play during the day on Friday, which probably would limit some of the fans that would be attending in Chicago. But triple bye is pretty likely just because you have 5 losses, and Wisconsin and Purdue have 6. Assuming you win Oregon and Maryland, you're locked in for the triple bye. And then you would play either 5 seeded Purdue or Wisconsin, which isn't the easiest game in the first round compared to, if you were a 2 or 3 seed, you're playing UCLA, you get some revenge there. I would take my chances in those type of games. But triple bye at the end of the day would be good. You would unfortunately get Michigan in the semifinals, and it would be a noon tip on Saturday. But that's kind of how it's going to work for the Big Ten seeding. If I had to guess right now, we would get the 4 seed. I think Nebraska would have to lose to UCLA. I think Michigan State would have to lose a couple of games just with the tiebreakers and everything. So 4 seed is most likely. And then just in terms of the NCAA tournament, it's crazy to say, but I still do have Illinois as a 2 seed. I got us over Purdue and Iowa State. Just none of these 2 and 3 seeds want to win any games. I think Nebraska has a few losses in February. Purdue's got a ton. Iowa State has 3, and they're playing Arizona tonight. So none of these teams really want to win games, which is leaving Illinois still on the 2 line. But as of right now, Illinois will be a 2 or a 3. There's a lot of the data is kind of built in already. Assuming you don't lose to Oregon and Maryland, you're probably pretty set up for a 2 or a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament.
All right, last question before the game day prediction. I've said that like 3 times already, but I think we already know what we're going to predict in terms of who's going to win this game. Who are you more worried about, Illinois or Purdue?
I would be more worried about Purdue. And I think it sucks to say, but they are very similar teams. Not the best athletes, some really good players. And if you look at any of the efficiency comparisons, you can do that on Bart Torvik with Illinois and Purdue. There's so much Illinois, comparing Illinois to these Purdue teams for the past few years, really good offense, a couple really good players, not so great defense, and not athletic whatsoever. So they're very similar. And Purdue's lost what 4 games at home now after Mackey Arena being one of the best environments I've at least been to. So I think I'm a little bit more worried about Purdue, but it's also hard to say because they were number one in the preseason. They're just a huge disappointment compared to Illinois. I think Illinois is still on track to have a really good season, really good March Madness. For Purdue, it was really national championship or bust going into the year, and they're definitely not winning the national championship. And I would be surprised if they go to the Final Four. So those expectations are kind of built in there. And I think just the whole Oscar Clough situation, coming in, he's not the greatest fit for this team. I kind of like TKR at the 5 last year a little bit more. And I don't know, Braden Smith's a special player, but I wouldn't count on Purdue going very far this year.
Yeah, I think Purdue is like one of the favorites to be picked as an upset, given the vibes that surrounded that program right now. Matt Painter's post game comments were pretty telling. So I think it could be worse if you're an Illinois fan. Obviously, 4 of 6 isn't great, but Purdue is reeling right now. And losing on the road to Ohio State, losing on the road to Indiana. Obviously, you got destroyed in 2 of your marquee games at Mackey Arena versus Michigan, and Michigan State, I guess, was a little bit closer, but still, you let a team that hasn't won there in quite some time beat you on your home floor in Mackey Arena, and then obviously Keaton Walker going off 46 points was another gut punch to them, and Iowa State absolutely ran the floor with them at the beginning of the season. So like you said, I think they lack athletes, so execution is really, really big. So Illinois needs to get their execution back, and I think that Illinois should be okay. Let's get to our game day predictions. I'll have you go first.
Sounds good. I think I said 84-81 Michigan over Illinois. So I got Michigan's right, but unfortunately Illinois was not able to score 81 points. But I think we'll score over 80 in this game. I'll give us Illinois 85, Oregon 67. I really just think in all phases of the game, we're better than this Oregon team. Like I said before, Nate Biddle's a good team or a good player on this team, but they've been a massive disappointment. They're usually pretty good under Dana Altman, and especially in March. But just the injury to Jackson Shellstad, and Biddle was out for a while too. And I just think Illinois is the better team in this matchup. Should be able to get back on track. I would love to see the offense score 85 points, and I think we'll get there. So Illinois 85, Oregon 67.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna go with something similar. I think they have a better offensive game, and I think they should have a better shooting night. I think all eyes will be on the Avicic twins, given their performance in the last couple games. I think Tommy's played actually pretty well outside of this Michigan game, but Z has, like you said, really, really struggled from the field, and I think struggled in general. And he just doesn't look right now. And I hope that he can get right because he brings this team to another level with his shot blocking ability and ability to make threes, and with his athleticism in the front court. So all eyes are going to be on Zvonimir Ivicic, Thomas Savicic, and Andre Stoyakovich as well. But I'm going to go with Illinois 81, and I'm going to go Oregon 67. So let's see what happens. I'm really, really curious to see how this team performs in its last 2 regular season games, because it seems like this Oregon game is kind of a must win at this point. Otherwise, the fans are just going to kind of fall off the rails here. Any final thoughts before we put a cap in our game day preview?
Shout out to all the seniors. Can't lose their last game at home. And I think Oregon would be a must win either way, especially if you lose 4 out of your last 6. Got to go into the Big Ten tournament on a 2-game winning streak. But we should be fine there. Hopefully, the boys have been practicing really, really hard. Underwood has been yelling at them pretty hard because we need some good effort in this one and some good effort moving forward. But yeah, we should be just fine. That's all I got.
Yeah, we should see a little bit more nasty, hopefully. I think Underwood has really stressed that he's been a little bit light on this team. So I expect them to really return to that nasty. They played really well in the bragging rights game after losing to Nebraska, so I do expect a similar turn of events for Illinois. And I hope that you could take some of these matchups personally, kind of like how you saw Merez Johnson do it, kind of like how you saw Yaxel Lenneberg do it, and how they do it every game. And they really, really just feed off of each other. And you need that emotional leader on this team, whether that's Kylan, whether that's Tommy, whether that's Merck, some emotion. The game's all about emotion. So I'm hoping to see someone step up as that emotional leader because they were definitely timid versus Michigan. So we will see you guys next for the Maryland game preview. We may do a recap depending on how the game goes. Obviously, hopefully not a loss, but we will have some more content out for you on armchairillini.com. Be sure to tune into our social medias for all our giveaways. Shout out to both of our sponsors as well, and be sure to like this video and subscribe. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and giving us feedback on how we can always do better. So with that, we'll see you guys soon. ILL.